welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will drop Ukraine's NATO bid but rejects giving up territory to Russia, and he was expecting the West to offer some kind of security guarantee. Chile's far-right Jose Antonio Cast vows a firm stance against crime after winning presidency, cast 59 leads Chile's Republican Party and secured the presidency on his third attempt. Czech President Peter Pavel appointed the government of new Prime Minister Andrej Babis on Monday, following an election on October won by the billionaire leader's populist ANO party. Workers at the Louvre Museum voted to strike over working conditions and other complaints, dealing another blow to the Paris Museum after an embarrassing jewelry heist in October. Australian media name a father and son as the gunmen who killed 15 people in a targeted attack at a Jewish Hanukkah event at Sydney's Bondi Beach. Police say the older man died at the scene. His son is critically injured. The Prime Minister signals tougher gun laws after the deadliest attack in decades. Thailand says it has halted fuel shipments through a Laos border checkpoint amid fears supplies are being diverted to Cambodia. The move comes as fighting with Cambodia spreads along the border, disputed with no signs of de-escalation despite ceasefire attempts. Syria says it arrests 5 suspects linked to a shooting in Palmyra that killed 2 U.S. soldiers and a civilian interpreter. Authorities say the attacker who was shot dead is a member of the security forces suspected of sympathizing with Islamic State. China says it supports Hong Kong's crime and national security measures following the conviction of media mogul Jimmy Lai despite international condemnation. Beijing says it firmly backs the city's authorities in punishing acts it says endanger national security. And let's start the bulletin with the top focus, viewers, on the Russia-Ukraine war. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are in Berlin for a second day of Ukraine peace talks. According to European Union officials, Witkoff and Kushner have begun their briefing for the European Union foreign ministers on Gaza via video conference. This comes as French Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot has earlier stated that he had suggested to European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas that the U.S. envoys could brief European Union ministers on Trump's Gaza peace plan. Meanwhile, heads of government from France, UK, Italy, Poland, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden and European Union and NATO have arrived at the German Chancellery for the second day of the summit. Meanwhile, the Kremlin said that after talks in Berlin between the US, European Union and Russia and Ukraine, Russia expects the US to update Moscow on some proposals. It has also added that Ukraine will not join NATO as one of the key questions, but subject to special discussion. This comes as the Ukrainian President Zelensky had earlier stated that his country is willing to drop ambitions to join NATO. And now joining me in this discussion is Sander van Hoorn, who is a former European Union correspondent, and he joins us live from Amsterdam. Thank you, Sander, for joining us here at NewsX World. We appreciate you taking time out for us. Now, crucial talks underway in Berlin between European Union, US and Ukrainian authorities. Do you think Zelensky is expected to get the guarantees that he's seeking from the West in this crucial summit?
Well, that's the big question. Guarantees by the Europeans are fine, but guarantees by the Americans are needed. And that's why the U.S. envoy Witkoff is there together with Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And people are waiting to see what they are offering, but the security guarantees is only one of the issues on the table. NATO membership has been taken off the table by Volodymyr Zelensky, but another sticking point is, of course, the territorial concessions that may be required on the part of Ukraine, and that is a tough sell for Zelensky at home. So people are also anxiously waiting to see what the Americans have to offer there.
Sander, we already know how Trump's patience was seemingly running out with Zelensky. Now in this meeting where Kushner is also present, how do you think he's going to negotiate with Zelensky as far as even holding elections in Ukraine is concerned?
Exactly, and for those elections, Zelensky has remarked that guarantees, security guarantees, will be needed. So he basically placed the ball back at the Americans' feet. But look, the Europeans and Ukraine know that the last one talking to the Americans is most likely to influence them. So that's why not only are the Americans and the Ukrainians in Berlin today, also several European heads of state and prime ministers are there trying to do just that, influence the Americans, see what the result is. And the word from Moscow, from the Russians, is that they are also anxiously awaiting this process and are waiting to be briefed by the Americans what comes out of the negotiations today.
Right. Now, given the fact that Zelensky is saying that even though NATO membership is out of the question, and he's earlier also voiced how neither the US see it ready for NATO, nor will Russia accept its NATO membership, he does maintain that he is not ready to give up territory. If he remains adamant on that key issue, how is Russia going to bargain in the peace talks?
Well, that depends on the other points of the plan. The preliminary reaction from Moscow has been that by taking NATO membership off the table, one of their key sticking points has been removed, but others remain. And when it comes to territorial concessions, are we talking a freezing of the current front lines? Are we talking, as was discussed with the Russians before, ceding territory that is not even held by the Russians as of today? Are we talking about ceding just Crimea? I mean, there's loads of different possibilities to reach a compromise there. And in any case, approval by the Russians will be needed, but also approval not only by the Ukrainian president, but also by his population that has been fighting for a couple of years and doesn't want to see territory, because then it seems it all has been for nothing. And a lot of people in Ukraine tell me that they know what will happen next. They will see territory, they will get a respite of a couple of years, and then Russia will come back for more, because that, they tell me, is what we have seen in the past.
Well, absolutely. Thank you, Sander, for weighing in your opinion in this discussion, but do stay on as we move on. Viewers, let's tell you news now coming from Chile, where far-right candidate Jose Antonio Cast has won Chile's presidential election, becoming the country's 38th president after defeating center-left candidate Janet Jara with 58% of the vote. Jara and her coalition Unity for Chile concede defeat. Cast, who is the leader of the Republican Party, hails the result as a broad mandate to tackle crime, immigration and economic concerns. Let's listen in. All right, before we play out that reaction for you, let's also tell you viewers that Cast has promised tougher law enforcement, stricter sentencing and mass deportations, while also taking socially conservative stances, including opposition to abortion. The election marks a historic far-right victory in Chile, the first since the end of the Pinochet-era dictatorship in 1990. Cast previously supported former dictator Augusto Pinochet, though he moderates his platform for today's voters. Right-wing leaders across Latin America, including Donald Trump ally Marco Rubio, Argentina's Javier Milei and Ecuador's Daniel Noboa, congratulated Cast on his win. Cast will be sworn in on March 11 next year, though he faces a divided National Congress that may limit some hardline policies. And now I welcome Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute, to join us in this conversation. All right. Thanks, Mr. Nagao, for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, Costa's election is very crucial for Latin America, given his far-right stance. What do you think his policies, how are they going to impact the Latin American region, especially when he says that immigration is one of the key issues that Chile faces and he will be taking a hardline stance over it?
Yes, this election result indicates a recent trend in the American continent, because since President Trump sworn in, he focusing on the immigration issue or drug issue and making pressure to the other country in the American continent, especially from Greenland, Canada, Panama, Venezuela, and now other country too. And in this case, the main point is, firstly, if the country's leader mentioned about immigration issue, because of the President Trump's remarks, it is not a far radical issue. This is a common issue now. So the people are familiar with this topic, and they can accept many related to issue or related remarks as a common word. So that's why when the president candidate strongly insists illegal immigration is a big problem and they should push these people out, this kind of remark is not radical, people think. So that's why there is a possibility this kind of candidate who insists this issue is well accepted in the common people. And but recent tension in the Venezuela is also affecting the result of the election in Chile, I think, because indeed the illegal immigration issue is indeed related with Venezuela, because many people came from Venezuela are illegal immigrants in Chile. So that's why recently the military operation in Venezuela has already started, and it will escalate, the people expect. Under such kind of situation, Chile's government should accept more tougher the president to deal with these issues. Maybe people think it. So that's why the result of this election has happened, I think. And the view from President Trump's stance, in this right-wing candidate can get relatively strong support from the President Trump is also affecting the situation, I think. Because a good example is the leader of Argentina, and so good relation with President Trump affecting the Argentina policy. So now Argentina can accept, get support from the United States, even if the U.S. government bans, disbands USAID or other supporting organization inside of the U.S. government. So even under such kind of situations, in case of the Argentina can get support from the U.S. government because good relation between the two leaders of the two countries. So if the Chile choose right-wing president, there's a possibility he will be the good friend of the President Trump. And in this case, for Chile's policies, in next some years, it will be the good result. Such decision makes a good result. People expect such kind of situation could happen. So that's why just now there's a possibility this is a good choice for the Chilean people, and that's why at least people believe it, I think.
All right. Now, organized crime is another issue that Chile faces other than the social protests that we've been seeing over time. How do you think he's going to tackle those?
Of course, the tougher stance of the security is needed, but this is indeed directly linked with immigration or illegal immigration issue or refugee issue from Venezuela. So that's why the tension in Venezuela means that the Chilean people feel the security or law and order disaster is very important now, and how to tackle is important, and new President will be the tougher stance in the security, immigration issue, or this that will make the good results. Many people, many voters believe it. That's why the result has happened, I think.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nagav, for speaking to us for now. With that, viewers, let's move on to news now coming in from Czech Republic. Czech's new Prime Minister, Andrej Babiš, has formally begun his term today following a victory in October election. Babiš's government taking over power is expected to start a potential shift in Czech's geopolitical relations. Sources say that Babiš, who's returning to power, is likely to weaken the country's support for Ukraine and drift more towards the likes of European Union's populist far-right flank. Andrej Babiš, a 71-year-old billionaire, was in opposition for the last 4 years and headed a broad coalition that included the SDP and the Motorists for Themselves party, both of which shared anti-European Union stances. At the swearing-in ceremony, Czech President Petr Pavel has appealed to the new coalition to govern responsibly. He has further urged the coalition to acknowledge the benefits of NATO and European Union membership to the Czech Republic, as both NATO and European Union helps making the country more stable and economically prosperous. And I now request Sander van Hoorn, the former European Union correspondent, to join us back into the discussion here. Thank you, Sander, for continuing to stay with us. Sander, very crucial the appointment of Babiš, and given the stance that he has against the European Union, how do you think that's going to affect his stance towards Ukraine, which is trying to wage a peace deal with Russia?
Potentially, it's signaling a big change, because Babiš has said that he will at least freeze any decision that the previous government has taken on support for Ukraine, and maybe even roll back some of his previous commitments. So that seems to be like a big problem in European decision making in the European Union. However, new procedures have been cooked up where some of the decisions on, for example, financing support for Ukraine can be taken not with unanimity, where Babiš would effectively have a veto, but with a simple or reinforced majority. So European leaders seem to have been preparing for scenarios like this.
And what about his internal policies for Czech Republic? What do you think are going to be some of the issues that he will have to challenge, that he has to face with? And how are his policies going to affect geopolitics other than the Ukraine question?
Well, Babiš has been there before, of course. He had been the president before, so people know him. He is not an unknown figure inside Czech politics. And last time around, corruption was one of the issues. It still is. So managing that will be an issue. The quality of life will be an issue, but also dependency on Russia or on the one hand, or the European Union on the other hand. That will be an issue. And there you also have to look at his coalition partners, that some of them are outspoken pro-Russia, the other is outspoken anti-EU and anti-NATO. And in that context, you have to weigh in the words of the president today on the installation of Babiš, saying that Babiš should govern prudently, and by prudently the president meant not so much outspoken anti-NATO, anti-EU, because as you said before, those had brought especially economical and security benefits for the Czech Republic, and you should not treat that lightly.
All right, thank you, Sander, for joining us for now and weighing your opinion in this discussion. Viewers, with that, we move on to some news now coming in from France, where Louvre staff vote to continue strike as unions warn the world's most visited museum is in crisis. Workers walked out after months of pressure, citing staff shortages, weak security and deteriorating working conditions. The strike follows a daylight jewel heist that exposed broken cameras, outdated equipment, and poor coordination. Unions say that crowding and thin staffing are putting both employees and visitors at risk. Talks with the government have shown progress on hiring and funding, but workers say promises are not yet confirmed. Meanwhile, France's culture ministry has ordered a deep reorganization of the Louvre as the country waits to see whether its most famous museum can stay open. Now moving on to news from the United Kingdom, Britain will begin regulating crypto assets from October 2027 under the new legislation aimed at giving the industry certainty while keeping so-called dodgy actors out of the market. The government says the law will extend existing financial rules to crypto firms, aligning the UK more closely with the United States rather than the European Union, which has its own tailored framework. Officials say the draft bill has seen only minor changes since it was published earlier this year. The move comes as a global interest in crypto has surged despite recent sharp falls in Bitcoin prices. Regulators, including the Financial Conduct Authority and the Bank of England, plan to finalize detailed rules by the end of 2026, while continuing to warn investors that they could lose all their money. And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates.